I'm Bruce Jones. I'm the Acting State Director for USDA Rural Development in South Dakota. I replaced Elsie Meeks, who retired back in February. And so I appreciated Elsie's leadership in USDA Rural Development and wish her well in retirement. But we're still here and we're doing the best we can. And I have a whole presentation on how important rural health care is, but it would be a waste of a speech on you guys because you understand the impact that has. I'm just trying to relay that we do as well. I'd like to thank East River. When I called Linda and said, hey, would you help sponsor this meeting? She said, I got something better. Why don't we just have it here and we'll just do it. So thank you, Linda, for that. I'm just going to give you a few second overview of USDA Rural Development for those of you that aren't familiar with us. We're actually a mission area in USDA that covers 3 different agencies. The Rural Utility Service, which includes telemedicine, electric, infrastructure, water, sewer. We have the Rural Housing Service that covers individual homes as well as rental homes. And of course the business programs that we have for that relending programs and guaranteed programs. And so it really covers a wide spectrum of rural development. And in South Dakota, there's only really 2 communities that don't fall under the rural definition, and it's Rapid City and Sioux Falls. And so every place else in South Dakota is considered rural. So we have a lot of territory to cover. I really think that while we're here, please take advantage of this opportunity, because we'd like to take advantage and pick your brain as far as what your needs are so we can better serve you. And that's really our mission here. So that's all my comments. Dan, did you want me to introduce Vern and Jay?
Yeah, if you would, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, it's a real privilege to introduce these 2 individuals to you. Vern, I've known you for forever. And work together in many different programs, and really appreciate Vern's leadership in Faulkton. He's the guy I call if I need anything in Faulkton, and he's always been great to work with. Jay, who's the administrator of the hospital there, if you guys could come up and make the presentation. And they're really good customers of ours, and we really appreciate working together.
Good morning. I'm Jay Jenne. I'm the administrator of Faulkton Area Medical Center in Faulkton, South Dakota. And I'd like to introduce Vern Hansen, chairman of the board. He's still a newbie to Faulkton. He's only been there how many years, Vern?
61.
61 years. So he's a newbie, and I have no chance at all of ever achieving permanent residency there. But anyway, good morning. I thought I had an hour, but I don't have an hour, but we'll get through this information as fast as we can. We think we're going to have a lot of loaded information for you today. I hope it's something you can use and walk away with happy and use. First of all, Vern Hansen once again, and I need to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Britton, South Dakota, which is a town about 100 miles that way. After college, I went to work out in the Black Hills and went to work in Aberdeen, where I was number 2 finance officer with a hospital there. Went to work in Watertown, Hot Springs, a couple other towns in South Dakota. And then I went on the interim circuit. I was a CFO and administrator in various hospitals in Oklahoma, Georgia, Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota. Where else was I? I forget. But I just wanted to let you know a little bit about my background, so you can see why the claim I'm about to make. I want to see why I make that claim. First of all, I've worked at about a dozen hospitals, give or take a few. And why do I bore you with all this? Because I'm going to make a claim. Faulkton is exceptional, absolutely exceptional every way. It wasn't always that way, though. We're going to take you back and show you why it wasn't exceptional. Slide number 1, there's our mission statement for the world to see. I'm Jay Jenig. This is Vern Hansen, chairman of the board. And as a side note, my preferred job title is not administrator, it's housekeeper. I prefer housekeeper because I found myself, especially in the interim circuit, I cleaned up everybody else's mess. And that's why I prefer housekeeper for a job title. But I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Hansen here.
Okay, so the history of healthcare in Faulkton, South Dakota has a long history. And one of the first things we have to talk about is a lady by the name of Dr. Abby Jarvis. Dr. Jarvis came to Faulkton in the winter of 1888-89. where her father was already located as a physician. And she, though not Faulkton's first practicing physician, Dr. Jarvis had the distinction in 1898 of being the first medical doctor to practice in South Dakota, the female. And she was also the first registered female pharmacist in 1895. And they had a pharmacy in Faulkton, and she delivered a lot of babies in that area. And one of the stories that I heard was that she always carried a black bag, and she had a horse and buggy, and the kids that the families that she visited and delivered babies always thought that she brought the baby in that black bag. So she was known as the black bag doctor. In 1917, they did start a hospital there called the Providence Hospital, and it was in a 3-story house, and they had rooms up on the 2nd and 3rd floors, and it was a house that was owned by a banker who eventually he committed suicide because he had absconded with some of the bank's funds, and he had a bank examiner coming in, and he didn't want to face him. So in 1917 to 51, the patients then were cared in that Providence Hospital, that 3-story house. In 1951, the county commissioners made the commitment to build a new hospital there along with Hill Burton funds that were available. And so they built a new brick structure, and in 1951 it opened. And it was a large, in 1966 there was a large addition put on because at that time we were hospitalizing more people than we had room for, so it became a 34-bed hospital. Okay?
Okay. In talking with some old timers from Faulkton, it really wasn't a matter of if there was a battle to stay open, it was just a matter of who's going to win today. I give credit to the leadership at the board level and the former administrators. Somehow, God bless them, they pulled through, and we've had healthcare in Faulkton now going on 98 years. And you can see why I call Mr. Hansen the hospital historian, because he does it so well. I'm going to go on to slide number 2, Mr. Hansen. Okay.
Okay. So, in September 1993, Fall County Memorial Hospital was certified as the first rural care primary in the nation. The hospital was licensed for 6 acute care and 6 swing beds. In 1998, the hospital's clinic classifications, the hospital and the clinic classifications were changed to critical access hospital and rural health clinic. From 1983 to 2000, the hospital was leased by the Presentation Health System, later known as Avera, and it continued until the fall of 1993. Starting in late 1994, the hospital clinic was managed by private systems. We were also, at that time,
the conference is now in presentation mode.
Had formed a corporation, a nonprofit 501c3, and were operating, and we contacted other people to help us with management. And so Lutheran Health Systems and Tealwood provided us with managers through that interim period.
In the year 2000, after 17 years of management, Faulk County Memorial Hospital once again became independent, and they've been that way ever since. Faulk County Memorial Hospital was not out of the woods. That was an artist picture of what the hospital would look like with the addition built on to the left there in 1966. Faulkton Memorial Hospital still struggled to stay open and pay its bills. It was independent once again, but talk of closure wasn't that far away from the local coffee tables and the coffee gang, so to speak. Most saw closure and struggle, but one saw an opportunity. An administrator at that time, the late Bob Fain, who this presentation is dedicated to, had the idea to build a new hospital, and he shared with that information Mr. Vern Hansen here, and before he retired. Slide number 4, plans were drawn up. They just needed someone to step up to the completion. In 2005, I had been a loaded gun on the interim circuit now for 5 years, so I was tired and I was worn ragged, so to speak. I was tired of being a housekeeper. I took the job in Faulkton. I began my duties in 2005, which is after the plans were drawn up. They had the place ready. They were ready to build. They just needed somebody to be at the helm when somebody did that. And it's the smallest hospital I've ever worked for, but the hospital is magical. It really is. At this time, we were about a $2 million operation. I give that to you because that's our baseline. By 2006, we drew up plans and redrew plans. And we got the shovels out in 2006. We had a groundbreaking on this spot, which looks like a tree strip, and it was. At that time, we were one of 32 facilities in the nation to be building a new facility. So we were very honored to have this relationship with USDA Rural Development. We were barely a $2 million operation, and I was also engaged in some housekeeping functions, which again, I prefer housekeeping, but not what I found out very quickly who could help me and who would not. Those that would not went somewhere else. About this time, I met with a gentleman from Maine. I asked him after a meeting, we're building a new hospital. What can we expect in way of revenues by building a new hospital? And he paused for a second. He looked at me and he said, we would expect your revenues to maybe even double. And I went, 2 million, 4 million. We can live with that. We can live very well with that. And I thought that was almost unbelievable. But don't kid yourself. If you step up and build, or when you step up and build, you're in for the ride of your life. Those of you that have done it know what I mean. You'll be planning till you can't plan anymore. You'll be thinking about things you never thought of before. You'll have plans laid out, and you'll draw something on it. You won't be able to find those plans for a day, and you'll go frantic till you find them. It's the ride of your life, but it's so worth it. Lots of questions you'll ask yourself.
So, we were ready to build, but it takes money. So, I had a relationship with USDA, Rural Development. My district director was David Fransons, who was domiciled in Huron. So I called him up and I said, I know you fellas build clinics, but do you build hospitals? And he says, yes. Well, we've never built one in South Dakota. So I said, well, are you interested? And he says, yes. So I had him come to a board meeting, and we went from there. And so we, in 2006, we started to build a 24,636 square foot building. We had $2,225,000 direct from rural development. We had the same amount indirect from the bank. And then we got a subsequent loan from Mr. Bruce Jones because we needed more money for the clinic. And so he graciously said yes. And so then I applied for a CDBG grant from the governor's office, and we applied for that through the Northeast Council of Governments. And so I applied for $1 million. And the guy at Northeast Council of Government said, you're crazy. He says, I've never seen a grant more than $300,000. So I got a call one morning from Governor Rounds, and he said, we want you to know that we've awarded you $700,000. So that was our foundation, the package that we put together to build. Then we organized a foundation, and we opened that up and started in April 2006 to collect money, donations, and to this day we have banked about $1.4 million, and it's been helped the hospital and clinic to buy equipment, and we do have some very sophisticated equipment there. I don't know, we have a 64 slice CT scan that many places don't have, but we do have.
Okay. During the building, we had weekly construction meetings. We found that necessary. And USDA was there very frequently at the table, almost every week. Slide number 8. Now this looks like people picking out tombstones. Bear with me. All 4 of us were looking at brick samples, looking at our iron that was being erected in front of us. We were looking at the brick samples, and we were trying to pick out brick samples, and I took this picture, and I said, this isn't going to work. We got 4 guys picking out colors of brick, and I've got ladies working in the building. This isn't going to work. And so I formed a design committee shortly thereafter for the rest of the color patterns, and assigned them a budget and said, make my hospital beautiful, or make our hospital beautiful, and they did an exceptional job. But this is our first design committee, or our first decoration committee, and it scared the living daylights out of me. Your people need to be involved. They can't be held off at a distance. The director of nursing, the project manager, the administrative assistant, and the clinic manager all are right there with you. And they have to be right there with you because it's their building as well. They have to live and work there. And when it comes to the open house, everybody's got a job. Everybody, even the chairman of the board is getting ready for the open house in this picture. With the move into the new Faulkton Medical Center in June of 2007, we were located next to the nursing home and the assisted living center, so we were all connected. In 2007, we moved into the building. This is the way it looked like when phase 1 was completed. 1 year later, 2008, we discovered we needed more space. In our desire just to stay open in 2005 and 6, that's all we wanted to do is just stay open and have a hospital. We designed the hospital small enough that it could be efficient. But the problem is we found out our revenue was ballooning and we just we didn't have the space we needed. We built it right size and found out every department needed to stretch. And so we've had those challenges ever since then. So we drew up plans to make our hospital a notch or 2 bigger. This is the raising of the old building. That's what happens to old buildings. But we discovered in 2008, our revenue had now doubled 1 year later after we built. 8 months into our building project, 8 months after we had opened, our revenues for the fiscal year had doubled. So we already met Eric's estimations already after 1 year. Working as a team, we had accomplished more than we had ever hoped to in 1 year. I am not proud to say it, but I developed wings and went to another hospital that promised a building project. I found out very rapidly that their board was not on my timetable. That didn't work. And I found out they had fired the administrator back in Faulkton they'd hired to replace me. And so I asked Vern if he'd hired me back, and by God, he took me back. But it's kind of a wash of a year for me and for the building project here in 2011, which I'm going to get to in a second. But anyway, I wanted to see how far we could get this to go and how far it would go. Revenue is now at $5.4 million. Remember, again, we started at 2. One of the first things I did when I got back in 2009, 2010, was we went back to rural development.
Yeah, we went back to rural development. We needed to build on an outpatient clinic on the east side of the hospital, and so we went back, and they very graciously again loaned us more money, and so we added on $1,100,000 direct, 225 was subsequent, 900,000 indirect for $2,225,000, and so the building project was started. And at that time, like he said, we were at $5.7 million on revenue.
What you see here is the shaded portion is the 2011 edition. The unshaded portion is the 2007 building. You'll notice that there's 2 rows of parking. Previously, we had 1 row of parking. We filled the ditch and doubled our parking, basically, is what we did. And you'll find out soon that we're currently out of parking. Okay, let's see where we at. Okay. We completed the addition with the outpatient center, including physical therapy. We've 1,700 square foot physical therapies in that little L-shaped portion. And I was so happy when I showed it to the physical therapist. Her name is Jennifer. And I said, Jennifer, what do you think of your new physical therapy? And she looked at it, 3 words, Jay. And I was thinking, it's wonderful, it's great. What was she going to tell me? It's not big enough. I went, you're kidding me. And we will be expanding that as well in 2016. One thing about project managers to the right, Vern Hanson's to the left. You need a good relationship with your project manager because they are very key to getting your project done on time, and they need to communicate with everybody there. Myself, Vern. I couldn't resist. Communicate, not coordinate. So I'm wondering what they're talking about. I think they were talking about rain. It looks like rain. What happened? It rained. That's our project manager in the ditch sweeping the water out, because the key is staying on schedule. If you don't stay on schedule, things get backed up really quick. 1 day later, it looked like this. There's 2 cement trucks that are backing up. They weren't going to wait. That's why you need a project manager that is on your side and working with you, and you've got to stay very much in touch with your project manager. And this is what your plans will look like when your project is done.
In 2013, again, we continued to talk about another expansion. You guys are crazy. So we included USDA and rural development from the start. In 2014, we had enough going. Board not yet convinced. Not all the board. There were board members that were, but they were not convinced to yet another addition. And so however, we were formally approved for $2,995,000 direct from rural development.
Somewhere along the way, this is what Faulkton Area Medical Center looks like today. It's a typical day. Actually, you'll see we're running short on parking there as well. This is what it looks like today. It's bright, shiny, it's new. Where would you like to have your health care? Would you like to have it in an old hospital or that bright, shiny new one? And that's what we're seeing the patients want. Along the way, we acquired 2 more properties because we kept busting out at the seams for various departments. This is our, what we call support services. It's located downtown. We remodeled it on the inside, and it contains our business office, medical records, transcription, coding, and nutritional services, which is an outpatient consulting area. We also acquired a building on our campus of the hospital called the WE Building. It used to be a daycare center, but we call it the Wellness and Education, or the WE Building. We have everything from CPR classes to education classes to exercise classes in there. Do I have time to play a video clip?
Yeah.
Okay.
All the time you need, we'll adjust.
To get back to that WE building, that was a present from Governor Janklow. I had written a grant for that, and it's a 1,200 square foot building. And at the time, we thought we needed daycare, but we never could get anybody off the ground to run that. And so finally, the hospital bought it, and they use it for exercise and that sort of thing over there, and education building too.
We were very privileged. I got a phone call at 10:30 in the morning here about 2 weeks ago. He said, this is so-and-so, we'll be there in an hour. Can you talk to us? And I was like, what about? We want to know how your hospital is struggling out there in rural South Dakota. I went, excuse me? We're doing a feature starting with Hovind about how they closed, and we're doing a piece on how hospitals are struggling out in rural South Dakota, and we would like to include you in that and talk to you. I went, well, you can come out and talk to us, but we're going to show you something you just totally don't expect. How is that? I'm going to show you a hospital that's thriving in rural South Dakota. And they changed the title, if you notice up there. Rural Hospital Thrives. I'd like to play this for you. It aired about 2 weeks ago on KSFY.
50 rural hospitals have closed across the country during the last 2 years, and 4 more right here in South Dakota are at risk.
These hospitals are very useful to people in the rural communities, keeping some people from driving more than 60 miles for care. KSFR News reporter Cammie Raisler stopped by the hospital in Faulkton, where staff says this medical center stands out from the rest.
The hospital in Holden is the only rural South Dakota hospital that's closed in the recent years.
It was sad because it was a big part of the community. There was so many people that worked there, and losing it, you had emergency care right there. Now you knew you had to go 20 or 25 miles further away to get that emergency care.
Stewie now works in Faulkton, another small town hospital. But Faulkton stands out amongst rural medical centers. The town decided to build a state-of-the-art facility.
Where I say you build it and they will come, because our old building it had problems, and people would rather go to Aberdeen for even a simple hospitalization. They'd rather go to the newer facility up in Aberdeen. You just take a few patients out of town that could have been treated in town, and there's your cash flow, there's your bottom line, black and red.
People come from near and far to utilize the Faulkton Area Medical Center.
We could not survive if we just depended upon just the people who live in this town. And we have patients coming from 40 miles away, 20 miles away.
Whether it's the updated facility, the state-of-the-art equipment, or just the small town personal care, patients come.
The feeling of a small town hospital is much better than it is in a large hospital, just because of the personal services. We don't have 30 patients on the floor at any given time.
In Faulkton, Cammie Raisler, KSFY News.
Board members say in 2004, many were fearful the Faulkton Hospital would have to close down. But since building new in 2007, they say things have only progressed.
Thank you. I was very honored that I was very surprised. I was very, very honored that they put that piece together for us. 2012, we were wildly successful. The revenue was at $8.3 million. Go back in time now. That's 4 times, folks. That's 4 times the revenue. And slide number 26. Loan approval is now a year old. It's 2006, 2009. What year am I in? What year am I in? It's 2015. The loan approval is a year old. We need more space. Again, revenue's approaching $10 million, almost 5 times, folks. We got serious about the addition. We talked about it for 2 years, and the board just wasn't really ready to make that move. But the loans are getting older, but we were promised it was still good. I was told by the architects that bids were coming in at about 25% of what they were when we applied for the loan, but we still thought we could get it done for that if we did things right. And so we went on to, we asked for a vote from the board.
Okay. So, on May 21st of this last month, we brought the proposition to the board for a vote, and the board voted unanimously to go ahead with the project as presented. And the estimated completion date that we have now is August 2016. Okay, fasten your seat belts.
I liked how Mr. Hanson said unanimous. That makes my job a lot easier now and in the future.
Oh, okay. I don't know. This is, to me, I guess that it's at FMAC, we continue to be governed by an independent local board of directors, in touch and able to move at the drop of the hat to changing situations. So I guess that's, to me, it says something that we have charge of our own destiny. We don't have to go to someone else. So.
I put that in there because I worked with Sanford, and I've worked with Avera, and I've worked with Lutheran Health Systems. I've worked with a bunch of, in these 12 hospitals I've worked at, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of corporations, and that's not where I want to be. Life in Faulkton is very good. Life, no traffic lights, no waits, no excuses needed. Faulkton is wonderful to live in. And working at FAMC is really exceptional. It really is. It's an honor to be there. It really is. The management we have is wonderful. I mean, the managers that run the place, I just turn them loose, keep in communication with them, and they just do an exceptional job. It's my privilege to be their administrator. It really is. In summary, Faulkton is a community of first.
We had the first woman doctor in South Dakota in 1895, first registered pharmacist in 1898, first rural primary care hospital in the nation, a community hospital as far back as 1917, first hospital to build new in South Dakota within a 23-year span ending in 2007. And at this time, Faulkton County Memorial Hospital was one of 32 facilities in the nation to build a completely new facility from the ground up. We're the first hospital in South Dakota to achieve stage 1 meaningful use. Faulkton was the first to offer internet training classes to prepare for testing as an EMT in South Dakota. And our Tom Herrick's developed that program, and it's went statewide. And we are not done with setting milestones, we hope.
Once again, this presentation is dedicated in memory of the late Robert Fain, who had the wonderful idea to build a hospital in a town of under 1,000 people. Some people thought he was crazy, but some people saw it was going to work. With the resolve of the team we assembled at Faulkton Area Medical Center and the financial resources of rural development, we were able to achieve this and so much more. And we think, without USDA believing in our dream, this wouldn't have been possible. Thank you.
And so, would I recommend this program? Without a doubt. It's a good program. There's good people to work for. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up was, and I don't know how you get to that slide, in I think it was 1996, the Reed Fund loaned the Development Corporation, of which I was a member, money to help build this community center in Faulkton. At the time, the city was looking to build a small community center on the backside of the city office, which wouldn't have held but maybe 100 people. This holds 400 people really and accommodates them to sit down. And it was made possible by a combination of things, a CDBG grant, the Reed Foundation, local donations, and we also built onto that, we built a wellness center and a second gymnasium for the school, who rents that from us. The other thing that they did too was, last year, they made it possible for us to put in a retail center along Highway 212. And part of the financing came from rural development, or from Reed Foundation to the Development Corporation, to a man from Australia who came here and built a retail center in Faulkton.
We'd like to encourage all of you to be all you can be. I mean, most people didn't dream that we could do what we did in Faulkton. And this can be replicated elsewhere. We assembled a management team that was exemplary, and we teamed up with the services of USDA Rural Development, and look what we did in Faulkton, South Dakota. We're under a town of 1,000 people, folks, and we're now over a $10 million operation.
So, I would like to thank and with all my heart, David Fransons, Lynn Jensen, Bruce Jones, and Doug Rail for where we are today. For without them, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did because there was just not the resources there in a small community to do that.
One more slide I'll show you here. This is a look at what our building project will be. The black square there is where our building project will be 2016. Our parking lot will be out there west of it. And we're still going to keep the parking out there. And our geothermal will be under snow removal there for the new facility, or the new addition. That in a nutshell is we're kind of out of room at that point. I told Vern we're going to have to buy that tree strip and put it in a strip mall. That concludes our demonstration, our presentation.
Well, I got one more.
Okay, go ahead.
I got one more.
Okay.
I got to praise rural development, whenever I can, because, so I'm going to say that when you team up with rural development and USDA, all of this becomes possible. I guess we'll be around for questions, for a while, questions, if anybody has any questions. So.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep.